As with other video games, the Sims community is very divisive. There are so many opinions surrounding the Sims games, like which Sims game is the best and which feature should return. So today I'm going to share mine, but I'm also going to go through 3 of the Sims games methodically and try and decide which one is the best. I'm going to be judging The Sims 2, The Sims 3, and The Sims 4. And just before I do share all of my opinions and stuff like that, I just want to reiterate that these are all my opinions. Also, when I talk about the Sims games, I'm not an expert by any means. I do play The Sims 2, The Sims 3, and The Sims 4, and I think I do have a reasonable experience with all 3 games. But yeah, I've not spent like 1,000 hours on each game. Like, I've played a lot of The Sims 4, and I've played the other 2 games a fair amount over the years, but not as much. So there might be some things that I might not know about or might not mention in this video about the older games. But if you have any extra knowledge about the older Sims games that I maybe didn't mention, or any opinions that you have, make sure to leave that in the comments. And the last part of my preface that I thought was really important to mention is that I do not think I'm biased. And when I say that, I basically mean that I love The Sims 2, The Sims 3, and The Sims 4 pretty equally, which is actually pretty rare because I think most people have a favorite, and I kind of do have a slight favorite, but not like a major favorite. I think all 3 Sims games have a lot of benefits and things that make you want to play them more than the others. And for me, what kind of Sims game I feel like playing depends on my mood. So as you can see here, I have 5 categories that we're going to be judging the Sims games on. And the categories are gameplay, aesthetics, freedom, value, and level of fun. And when I say value, I basically mean how much you're getting for your money. So for example, first we'll be doing gameplay, and I'm going to rank The Sims 2 on gameplay, The Sims 3 on gameplay, and The Sims 4 on gameplay. I will give each game a ranking out of 10. We will do the same for all of the other categories, and then at the very end, I will add up all of the points, and we will objectively have a winner. Also, in case you were wondering, the main reason why I'm not including The Sims 1 in this video is because I've not played it. Another reason is kind of because I think it's not fair. Like, the jump from The Sims 1 to The Sims 2 is so massive, and I feel like the points in The Sims 1 wouldn't really measure up to the other games. So just in case you were wondering, that's why. So first up, we have the gameplay in The Sims 2. There were obviously a lot of really major features that were included in The Sims 2, one of those being the memory system, which of course added a lot of backstory and context to the Sims, and also basically made them feel more human and relatable. Sims had good memories and bad memories, and they all added up and intertwined to make them who they were. And then of course there was a chemistry system which really revolutionized how Sims interacted with each other. I mean, the amount of realism that added to the game in 2004 or 2005, I think it came with an expansion, but I'm not sure. But I mean, that was like 20 years ago, and it was executed very well in my opinion. And then I think the wants and fears in The Sims 2 were amazing as well. Like, it kind of gave you a direction for what your Sims wanted and didn't want to do, and of course added to the relatability. And then in The Sims 2 there were aspirations, but there was only like 5 or 6, I think. They were more generalized, but still really easy to apply to every Sim in my opinion. And then on top of that, there was so much lore in The Sims 2. I think out of all of the Sims games, The Sims 2 had the deepest lore and the most immersive lore. I mean, you really do think of Belagoth's disappearance, the Calientes, Don Lothario. We were really drawn to all of these Sims, and they became iconic to the Sims franchise as a whole. So I think when you combine all of that, it results in perfect storytelling, a lot of realism, and really immersive, interesting gameplay. So I'm going to rank the gameplay for The Sims 2 a 9.5 out of 10. The Sims 3 is renowned for its gameplay, and a lot of Simmers go die hard for The Sims 3. The biggest feature in The Sims 3 is definitely the open world. It really did add a lot of gameplay options. For example, your Sim could wake up, they could go to work, you can watch them go to work, then they can go to a restaurant, they can go to the beach, they can go to so many different places without a loading screen. It really made it a lot of fun to play, and you felt more attached in my opinion. And then in The Sims 3 there was also story progression, which really kept you up to date with what was going on in your town. All of the drama and key events that happened in town, whether it was your neighbor getting engaged or your friend dying or something like that, you would get it through a notification. The open world and story progression really went hand in hand because it just made everything feel super lively and bustling. And as I mentioned in the third bullet point, a ton of chaos always occurred. I feel like if I had to pick a winner for the most chaotic Sims game, it would have to be The Sims 3, mainly because there's always so much going on in that game, it's almost impossible for there not to be chaos. One thing I love about The Sims 3's gameplay is the traits and the personalities. Not only do I think The Sims 3 Sims were the smartest, but in base game, The Sims 3 had 5 trait slots, and there was a huge variety of traits to choose from, and I really think it made every Sim feel different. So with that being said, I think The Sims 3's gameplay is very good. Do I think it's as good as The Sims 2? No, not in my opinion. I think the memory system in The Sims 2 is one of my favorite features, but in The Sims 3 they really dumbed it down, and it kind of makes my Sims 3 gameplay less immersive, and it kind of makes it feel like you have to remember everything, which of course can be difficult if you're doing really long save files. It is kind of nitpicky and everyone has their own opinion, but I think it does kind of remove a point in the gameplay for The Sims 3 in my opinion, so I'm going to give The Sims 3 an 8.5 out of 10 for gameplay. And next, a much shorter list, is The Sims 4. So definitely the biggest thing in The Sims 4 that really added to the gameplay was the gallery. It's something that we've never had before, and it really added a new layer of accessibility. For example, I'm a horrible builder and I also don't really enjoy it, so in the past Sims games I kind of had to build because there wasn't really an option. But in The Sims 4, if I want a mansion, I can get a mansion. If I want a cute cottagecore chalet in the woods, I can go ahead and download it basically. And of course the same with Sims, it's so much easier. And then another thing in The Sims 4 that I love is the multitasking. Not only is it good for getting things done quicker, but I think it's also really nice for storytelling reasons. Like if your Sim's a parent, they can be cooking breakfast but then also chatting to their kids. If your Sim's on a date, they can be watching a movie and talking to the Sim next to them. And another thing that I think is really good for The Sims 4 gameplay is how beginner friendly it is. I think that's honestly one of the biggest reasons why a lot of Sims players come back to The Sims 4 even if they don't objectively think it's good. It really is just so easy to throw yourself back into because it's so easy to play. And of course that's amazing for new players who just want something fun to play and just want to kind of get the hang of things quickly. So that's my general overview of The Sims 4 and the things that are unique and interesting in the gameplay. And in my opinion, the gameplay in The Sims 4 is a 6.5. If you asked me this like 3 years ago, it probably would have gotten a 4 or a 5, and they have been adding a lot of new stuff which makes the game more fun. But I think when you go back to The Sims 2 and The Sims 3 and compare the gameplay, especially base game, you can't even compare. So now moving on to the aesthetic. The Sims 2 was made in 2004, so it's a pretty old game, and honestly I really like the Sims 2 aesthetic. I do acknowledge of course that it was made in 2004 and it is a little dated, but I still really like it and I think it has a special charm to it that none of the other games have, and it's part of what makes the game really immersive. So aesthetically, I'm going to give The Sims 2 a 7.5 out of 10. Now moving on to The Sims 3. The Sims 3 was made in 2009, and it definitely went for a more alpha realistic vibe. For example, a lot of the hairs had strands and everything was really glossy, and when I think about it, I can definitely see what the team were trying to go for. However, I don't think they executed it as well as I think they should have, and that kind of results in me not liking the way the Sims look, and it kind of makes it harder in some instances to immerse yourself into the game. But on a brighter note, on the other side of the aesthetic scale, in my opinion, The Sims 3 has the best worlds and environments. When it came to the realistic aspect, I think the Sims team really nailed it there, and I think all of the worlds look spectacular. So overall for the aesthetic, I'm going to rank The Sims 3 a 6.5 out of 10. And now onto The Sims 4 aesthetic. Obviously, since it's the most recent Sims game, it has the best graphics, but instead of following up on the more alpha visuals of The Sims 3, The Sims 4 went back to the more Maxis match style, and I think that might be one of the most divisive areas in The Sims 4 because some people love the alpha look, some people love the Maxis match look. I'm personally more of a Maxis mix person, but definitely more on the Maxis match side than the alpha. So for me, I really like the way The Sims 4 looks. The Sims in The Sims 4 act as a really good base for all of the CC that I use, so I feel like everything works really well there. And I think that's the case for most people. Like if you wanted to make your game super alpha, super realistic with all of the alpha CC, in my opinion that would look really good in The Sims 4, whereas if you did that in The Sims 3 with Maxis match, it would just look odd. So it's definitely really adaptable, and I think all of the worlds in The Sims 4 are pretty cute, except from Batu, of course. So I think when I consider all of that, I think the aesthetic in The Sims 4 is really, really good, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Next, we're going to be talking about freedom in The Sims 2, and what I mean by freedom is basically the freedom to play the game the way you want to play it. So basically the amount of avenues and options you have within the game to have fun. In the 3 base worlds that come with The Sims 2, each town has their own series of scripted events, and the purpose of the scripted events is basically getting to know the town. You go through each household and play through a series of events and get to know all of the context and the backstory. And in terms of freedom, I think is a good thing because it basically lets you know what's happened and then gives you different avenues to go down and lets you kind of decide what happens next. However, people could argue that it restricts your freedom because it kind of pigeonholes you into a certain storyline, whereas in The Sims 3 and The Sims 4 there weren't scripted events, so you could kind of just load into a household and do whatever you wanted from the start. But then again, I think you can technically do that in The Sims 2, but it's kind of harder to avoid. And then The Sims 2 also introduced the create a world feature, Creator, which basically allowed you to create your own world from scratch, and it was really user-friendly and easy to do. And it basically meant that if you wanted to start everything from scratch, you could do so. In general, there was just so many world customizing features, like you could add trees, clouds, rainbows, but one of the downsides is corruption. Now, if you're a Sims 2 player, you know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to corruption. I mean, are you even a real Sims player if you haven't heard of pink soup? Basically, when it came to corruption in The Sims 2, there were so many things that you had to be careful of when you were playing your game. For example, in The Sims 4, if you deleted a sim that you didn't like, that would be fine, nothing bad would happen. But in The Sims 2, if you deleted a family or a sim, that could end up corrupting your game. There are definitely some other ways to corrupt your game that I'm not aware of, which is kind of not a good thing because I should know, but in general it definitely restricted your freedom and you had to be more careful. And then in general, I think there are some things that I'm probably not aware of with The Sims 2 because it is an older game that kind of leads to more restrictions when it comes to freedom. So in terms of freedom, I'm going to give The Sims 2 a 6.5 out of 10. I think all of the customization, the create a world, and the scripted events are great, but I think some of the restrictions and the oversights that come with the age of the game can't be ignored. Now back to The Sims 3, in terms of freedom, obviously the open world adds a ton of freedom, which we've already discussed. The Sims 3 also had a create a world tool, which I've never used because it's actually really difficult to use. Like in The Sims 2 it was a lot more user friendly, whereas in The Sims 3 it takes a lot more precision. So technically there's the freedom of creating your own world, but I think it's restricted by how difficult it is to do. And then the customization in general in The Sims 3, which we've kind of touched on, obviously expands to the world in general. So many gameplay options, for example like create a style. There are obviously some setbacks with The Sims 3, but I think in terms of freedom it's definitely the best. So I'm going to give The Sims 3 a 9.5 out of 10 for freedom. So now moving on to The Sims 4, and in The Sims 4 there was no create a world tool, which is obviously a major setback considering it was in The Sims 2. And in general you can't really customize the world other than the lots. One thing that's in this game that's not in the other games is that all of the worlds are connected. So if you have a sim that lives in Oasis Springs, they can freely go to Willow Creek, which definitely adds a lot of freedom because it means you don't have to go through a big ordeal to go between worlds. And then of course one of the biggest things in The Sims 4 is the gallery, which I've already touched on, and in general it's a big asset and a huge resource for a lot of simmers. In my opinion, I think The Sims 4 did add a lot of freedom, but I don't think it's necessarily an improvement. Like I don't think it's the best. So I'm going to be generous and give The Sims 4 a 7.5 out of 10, mainly because of the gallery, because I feel like the gallery is something that everyone uses all the time. But if you exclude the gallery, it would probably be like a 4 or a 5, honestly. Now we're going to be looking at value for money. I'm not going to be like discussing numbers and how much everything costed because that would be too complicated, but The Sims 2 had 8 expansion packs and 10 stuff packs, and from my experience of owning all of the packs, each pack added a lot of gameplay. I feel as though when you separate the packs in this game, they really stand alone and feel really solid, and I feel as though they weren't super niche, they were really useful and everyone used them in their game. The DLC in The Sims 2 is much more attainable, so in my opinion, the value for money in The Sims 2 is an 8.5 out of 10. In The Sims 3, there were 11 expansion packs and 8 stuff packs, so a little bit more than The Sims 2, and in my opinion, most of the packs were pretty solid. I mean, even if you didn't really like one of the packs, you couldn't say that they were horrible. Of course, there are some exceptions like Katy Perry Sweet Treats, but overall, I think The Sims 3 DLC was really high quality and really added a lot of valuable gameplay, so I'm going to rate it a 7 out of 10. Now we are moving on to The Sims 4. So as you can see here, I have noted that there are too many DLCs to count because there really are. There are so many expansions, so many game packs, stuff packs, kits. There's so many kits. And I think the idea in The Sims 4 especially is kind of picking what you want, which is fine I guess, but it's not like we really have any other choice unless you want to spend $1,000 on the game. There's definitely a lot of cash grabbing and time wasting, for example Journey to Batuu, and in general there have been a lot of controversies with a lot of the expansions over the years, and there's been so much of it that so many players just have vowed never to play The Sims 4 again. I think the value for money in The Sims 4 is very poor, and I'm going to rate it a 3 out of 10. And at this point you might be asking, but D'Angelo, why do you still play The Sims 4? Now moving on to the final category that we will be judging the games on, fun or level of fun. This will basically be me just summarizing what I like about the games and why I find them fun. So for The Sims 2, I love how quirky and goofy it is. I also love the compelling lore, the stories, and all of the Sims. As I said earlier, I feel like all of the iconic Sims and storylines are in The Sims 2, and I honestly just love how it feels like a soap opera. When I play The Sims 2, I play rotationally, which is basically going around each household in the town. So it's kind of like I play each family's events and then I move on to the next, and they all kind of line up, and it's really fun. So in terms of level of fun for me, I'm going to rank The Sims 2 a 9 out of 10. For The Sims 3, I love how chaotic it is. There really is always something going on, and you can really fit in so many Sims into one world. And for me, the customization and micromanaging is really fun as well. And in my opinion, The Sims are the smartest, and there's so many options. So I'm going to give The Sims 3 a 9 out of 10. Now last but not least, The Sims 4 has my heart when it comes to create a sim. On a good day, I could spend hours and hours making sims and create a sim, and honestly that's where a lot of my YouTube content is focused on. And I feel like the Sims 4 mod community is the biggest out of all of the games, and there's so many cool mods to apply to the game. And going back to the beginner friendly aspect, I think the game's very adaptable and you can play whatever game you want to play. So overall, I'm going to rank The Sims 4 a 9 out of 10 as well, just like The Sims 2 and The Sims 3. So all of the points have now been added up, and it's now time to see where the game's ranked in my ranking. So in third place with a score of 35 out of 50, we have The Sims 4. And then in second place with a score of 40.5 out of 50, we have The Sims 3. And first place with a very close score of 41 out of 50, we have The Sims 2. It's crazy how close The Sims 2 and The Sims 3 is in terms of points, but I honestly feel like it makes a lot of sense because if you ask me what game I prefer out of The Sims 2 or The Sims 3, it's really hard for me to choose. Now, as I said at the beginning, I love all Sims 3 games equally, and I guess this is just my analysis of which game is objectively better, and I guess that's what the video is about. It's about which Sims game is the best. I'm sure some of you guys will have different opinions to me, so let me know what you guys think in the comments. Which Sims game do you think should have came in first place? I really had a lot of fun making this video because I love going into my opinions and kind of breaking things down. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you are, and I will see you soon with another Sims video. Bye!